It was -4 degrees Celsius when my daughter locked the door. Not slammed it. Not hesitated. She closed it slowly, quietly, as if she didn't want anyone to hear, and left me standing on the frozen stone steps of the house I once paid for, watching my breath turn into pale clouds in the London air. If you've ever been betrayed by the people you raised, make sure you subscribe, because what happened next changed my life forever. The light inside her house was warm and golden, glowing through the glass like a cruel invitation. I could hear movement. Voices. A man is laughing softly. That was the moment I realized she hadn't shut me out because she was busy or confused. She had shut me out because she didn't want me inside. My name is Eleanor. I am 69 years old. I have lived in this city my entire life. And until that night, I believed the worst thing a mother could experience was being forgotten. I was wrong. 2 hours earlier, I had been sitting in my small flat in North London, wrapped in a thick cardigan, staring at a radiator that refused to heat up. My hands were stiff as I held my mug of tea. The room felt colder than it should have. The windows were shut. The door was locked. And yet, the cold crept in as if it had found a way through the walls. On the table in front of me lay my electricity and heating bills. They were higher than they had ever been. 3 times higher than last winter. I read them over and over, trying to understand how that was possible when I was barely using the heating at all. That was when I checked my bank account. There was a transfer I didn't recognize. Not small. Not accidental. Large enough to make my stomach drop. I refreshed the page. The number stayed the same. I sat there for a long time, listening to the ticking of the clock on the wall, feeling a strange pressure building behind my eyes. I wasn't panicking. I wasn't crying. I was just stunned. I had always been careful with money. Even after my husband, Arthur, passed away, I kept track of every bill, every payment, every savings account. It was how I survived. It was how I stayed independent. So when I saw money missing, I knew something was wrong. I called my daughter. She answered on the 3rd ring, cheerful and relaxed, as if she had nothing in the world to worry about. "Mom, what a surprise," she said. "Is everything okay?" I told her about the heating. I told her about the bills. I told her about the missing money. There was a pause. Just a tiny one, but a mother notices those things. "Oh," she said lightly. "That. Don't worry, Mom. I've been helping you manage things. You asked me to remember." I didn't remember. But I didn't say that. "Maybe I should come by," I said. "We can look at it together." Another pause. Longer this time. "It's freezing out there," she replied. "The roads are icy. Why don't you come tomorrow?" "Tomorrow," I repeated softly. "I'm already cold," I told her. "And I'm worried." Her voice changed. "Not much. Just enough." "Fine," she said. "If you really insist." That was how I ended up at her door that night. My coat pulled tight around me, my scarf wrapped around my neck, my heart beating faster with every step. When she opened the door, she didn't smile. She looked past me. "Can I come in?" I asked. She hesitated. Just for a second. Then she said, "I'll be right back," and closed the door. And she didn't open it again. I knocked. I called her name. I felt the cold seep into my shoes, my legs, my chest. Inside, the lights stayed on. Inside, someone laughed. And that's when I realized I wasn't being forgotten. I was being replaced. The wind cut straight through my coat as I stood on my daughter's doorstep, staring at the door that refused to open. My fingers were numb, but I forced them to curl into fists just to feel something. Inside, the house was alive. Warm light spilling through the windows, shadows moving, voices drifting softly through the glass. She was in there. My daughter. Sitting comfortably while I stood outside in the freezing dark, like I was no longer part of her life. I don't know how long I stayed there. Minutes, maybe. Or maybe it only felt that way. When the cold finally pushed past anger and into danger, I turned away. Pride wouldn't keep me alive. I walked down those steps slowly, carefully, because the ice had begun to form on the pavement. I didn't want to fall. I refused to give her that. By the time I reached the street, my whole body was shaking. Not just from the temperature, but from what I had seen through that window. The man inside with her wasn't a stranger. He was someone who had once tried to convince me to invest money in his business. Someone who had asked too many questions about my house, my savings, and my will. I had trusted my instincts then and kept my distance. Seeing him there now made everything suddenly clear. They were working together. I took out my phone, my fingers clumsy with the cold, and called the only person I knew who would believe me. David answered after 2 rings. "Eleanor? It's late. I need help," I said. My voice sounded steady, even though I felt like I was falling apart. "I think my daughter is trying to take everything from me." There was silence on the other end of the line. Then his tone changed. "Where are you?" "Outside her house. She locked me out." "Stay there," he said. "I'll arrange a ride." 20 minutes later, a taxi pulled up. David's assistant stepped out with a thick blanket and helped me inside. I didn't look back at my daughter's house as we drove away. I didn't want to remember it that way, glowing with warmth while I was being shut out. David met me at his office despite the hour. He looked older than I remembered, but when he saw me wrapped in that blanket, something hardened in his eyes. "Tell me everything," he said. So I did. The missing money, the heating problems, the door. He listened without interrupting, his jaw tightening with every detail. "She came to see me last week," he said when I finished. "She wanted information about the power of attorney and transferring your property into her name." My heart sank. "She told me you were confused, that you needed help managing your affairs." I laughed bitterly. "So that's what this is." David pulled out a thick folder. My name was written across the front in Arthur's careful handwriting. "Your husband was very protective of you," he said. "He set up safeguards, a trust, conditions that have to be met before anyone can take control of your assets. Your daughter doesn't know about them." For the first time that night, I felt something other than fear. "She can't touch anything," David continued, "but she can try to make it look like she should." "And the heating?" I asked. He frowned. "If she has access to your bills or your accounts, she could easily interfere. Make it uncomfortable. Make you feel helpless. Make me move." The realization made my stomach twist. "She wants me out," I whispered. "Yes," David said. "And she wants your house." Over the next few days, I did exactly what David told me to do. I pretended nothing was wrong. I answered my daughter's texts. I let her come by. I let her talk down to me, explain my own life to me as if I were a child. I watched as she sorted through my papers, slipping certain documents into her bag when she thought I wasn't looking. "You should really think about assisted living, Mom," she said one afternoon. "It's not safe for you to be alone." "I like my home," I replied softly. She smiled, but there was something sharp behind it. "You won't forever." Each visit made her bolder. She brought forms. She talked about doctors. She mentioned care facilities with fake sympathy in her voice. And every time I smiled and nodded, because every lie she told was another piece of evidence. One evening after she left, David called me. "She's filed paperwork," he said. "She's trying to have you declared unfit." I sat down slowly. "So it's begun." "Yes," he replied. "But she's underestimating you." I looked around my cold little flat, at the photographs on the walls, at the memories my daughter was so eager to erase. "Let her think that," I said, because the colder it got outside, the more determined I became, and she had no idea what was coming next. The first thing you learn when someone is trying to take your life apart is that they don't do it all at once. They do it quietly, slowly, with smiles, with concern in their voices, with paperwork that looks harmless until you read the fine print. After David told me my daughter had started the process to have me declared unfit, I didn't sleep that night. Not because I was afraid, but because my mind wouldn't stop working. Every conversation I'd had with her over the last few months replayed itself in my head. Every time she had offered to help. Every time she had asked about my bills, my accounts, my house. I had mistaken her interest for care. It wasn't. It was inventory. The next morning I woke up before the sun. The flat was still cold. I pulled on my coat and made tea, sitting at the kitchen table where my husband used to read the newspaper. Arthur had always said, "People show you who they are when they think you're not paying attention." I wished he were still here to see what his daughter had become. David had arranged for a private doctor to evaluate me that afternoon. Not one chosen by my daughter. Not one who would be fed lies. A professional who would look at me, speak to me, and document the truth. I dressed carefully, brushed my hair, put on the same simple cardigan I always wear. I wanted to look like myself. Not frail, not confused, just an older woman who still knew exactly who she was. When my daughter arrived that morning, she was overly cheerful. "Mom, you look nice today," she said, stepping inside and glancing around as if checking what was missing. "I have an appointment later," I replied. "With who?" she asked too quickly. "A doctor," I said. Her smile froze for half a second. "Oh," she said. "I was going to suggest we schedule one. Just to make sure everything's okay." "I'm sure it will be," I replied calmly. She studied me, then really studied me, as if trying to see if I was onto her. But I kept my face soft, confused, harmless. That's what she wanted to see. After she left, David called. "She's moving fast," he said. "We need to be ready." The doctor's evaluation went smoothly. He asked me about my childhood, my marriage, my finances, and my daily routines. I answered clearly, carefully, honestly. By the end of it, he smiled. "You're sharper than most of my patients half your age," he said. I smiled back. That evening, I received a message from my daughter. "Mom, I've arranged a meeting tomorrow. It's important. We need to talk about your future." The words made my stomach tighten. I forwarded it to David. "That's it," he replied. "She's making her move." The next day, she picked me up in her car. She was unusually quiet as she drove, her eyes fixed on the road. We didn't go to a cafe or her house. We went to an office building I didn't recognize. "This is where my friend works," she said. "He's just going to explain a few things." My chest tightened. Inside, a man in a suit greeted us. He smiled too widely. I recognized him immediately. The same man I had seen through the window on that freezing night. The one who had been inside with her. "This is Mum," my daughter said. "She's been having some trouble lately." I said nothing. They led me into a small conference room. Papers were laid out on the table. Forms. Contracts. Words like care, authority, and property are printed across the top. "This is just to make sure we can help you," the man said smoothly. "So your daughter can take care of things." I picked up one of the pages and pretended to squint at it. "What does this do?" I asked. "It gives your daughter the right to manage your affairs," he replied. "For your safety." "For my safety," I repeated. My daughter nodded. "It's for the best, Mom." I looked at her. Really looked at her. At the little girl she had been. At the woman she had become. Then I smiled. "If you think it's right," I said. Relief washed over her face. I signed. Or rather, I let her think I did. Because what she didn't know was that David had already prepared a legal trap. The document in front of me was worthless without the trust approval. And that trust was something she would never control. As we left the office, she squeezed my arm. "You did the right thing." I nodded. Inside, I was already planning her downfall. Because when someone thinks they've won, that's when they make their biggest mistakes. And she was about to make one that would cost her everything. The moment my daughter believed she had won, everything changed. I could see it in the way she smiled at me now. In the way she spoke more boldly, no longer pretending to be patient or gentle. She thought she had the papers. She thought she had control. And people who think they have power always get careless. The morning after I signed those documents, or rather after she believed I had, she came to my flat without calling first. She used the spare key I had given her years ago, back when she was still my little girl and not the stranger she had become. "Mom," she called out, stepping inside. "I made you some soup." I was sitting at the kitchen table with a book open in front of me, pretending to read. I looked up slowly. "Oh, that's kind of you," I said. She placed the container on the counter, then looked around. Her eyes lingered on the framed photos, on the old clock, on the shelves of books Arthur had loved. This place was already becoming hers in her mind. "We need to talk about moving you," she said, as if she were discussing the weather. "Moving me?" I asked. "Yes," she replied. "Somewhere warmer, safer, with people who can look after you." "I like it here," I said softly. Her smile thinned. "You won't be here much longer." The words hit harder than any slap. Later that day, David called me. "She's acting fast," he said. She's already tried to access your accounts. Did it work? No. Everything bounced back. She doesn't know why. I almost laughed. She thinks she owns me now, I said. She doesn't realize she walked into Arthur's trap. David chuckled. Your husband was a very smart man. The next week became a strange performance. My daughter took over everything, or thought she did. She ordered new furniture for her house. She talked about selling mine. She bragged to friends about how difficult it was to care for an aging parent. Played my part. I forgot things. I asked her to repeat herself. I let her feel powerful. Behind the scenes, David and I were gathering everything. Phone records, bank statements, emails, recordings. Every lie she told, every move she made. One evening, David invited us both to his office. I think it's time, he said. My daughter arrived confident, smiling, already planning what she would do with my home. David placed a folder on the table between us. Eleanor, he said, do you know why you're here? I'm not sure, I replied, looking to my daughter. She smiled sweetly. To make sure everything is settled. David opened the folder. Actually, he said, it's to explain why nothing your daughter has done is legal. Her smile vanished. He laid out the trust documents, the recordings, the doctor's report, the evidence. My daughter's face drained of color. This isn't possible, she whispered. Oh, it is, David replied calmly. And everything you tried to do is documented. She turned to me, eyes wide. Mom, I was just trying to help. I looked at her with a sadness that felt heavier than anger. You left me to freeze, I said quietly. You don't do that to someone you love. For the first time she looked afraid. And she should have been. Because the trap had finally closed. The room was silent. Not the calm kind of silence. The kind that presses against your ears until you can hear your own heartbeat. My daughter's hands trembled where they rested on the edge of the table. The man she had brought with her, the one who had been inside her house that freezing night, sat stiffly in his chair, his confident smile gone. David let the moment stretch. This is a protective trust, he said, tapping the documents. It was created by Eleanor and her late husband over a decade ago. It means that no transfer of property, no power of attorney, no sale, no removal, and no forced placement can happen without multiple legal conditions being met. None of which have been. My daughter shook her head. She signed the papers. David slid a document across the table. Those papers were legally meaningless. You gave her the wrong ones. Her eyes snapped to me. You knew, she whispered. I folded my hands in my lap. I suspected. Her face twisted. You let me believe I had control. Yes, I said. Because that's what you wanted. And people always reveal the truth when they think they've already won. The man beside her stood up. This is a misunderstanding. David raised a hand. Sit down. Everything you two discussed is recorded. Every financial move. Every conversation. Even the doctor you tried to influence. My daughter looked like she was about to be sick. You were going to put me in a care home, I said quietly. You were going to sell my house. And you were going to take everything Arthur and I built. Her voice broke. I deserved it. That sentence hurt more than anything else. David closed the folder. This isn't over yet. We are now formally filing for financial abuse and attempted fraud. The man cursed under his breath. My daughter looked at me one last time. You're ruining my life. I met her eyes. No. You did that when you locked me out in the cold. Outside, snow began to fall. And for the first time since that night on her steps, I finally felt warm again. The snow was still falling when we left David's office, but it felt different now. It wasn't biting anymore. It wasn't cruel. It was quiet, slow, almost gentle. Like the city itself was holding its breath after what had just happened inside that room. My daughter didn't speak as we walked to the lift. Her heels clicked sharply against the floor. A nervous rhythm she couldn't control. The man who had been helping her, the one who had smiled beside her while I froze on her steps, stayed close behind, his jaw tight, his eyes darting as if he were already looking for a way out. I didn't look at either of them. I kept my eyes forward, my hands steady on my cane. I had spent most of my life making space for my daughter's feelings, her moods, her fears. But not now. Not after what she had tried to do. The lift doors slid shut, sealing us into a small metal box. The silence inside it was thick, heavy, filled with everything no one was brave enough to say. "You didn't have to do this," she finally muttered, staring at the numbers as they lit up. "Yes," I said softly. "I did." Her head snapped toward me. "You could have talked to me. You could have let me help you." "You weren't helping," I replied. "You were erasing me." The doors opened and we stepped out into the lobby. David remained behind, already making calls, already setting the next phase of everything into motion. What had happened in that office wasn't just a confrontation. It was the beginning of the end of her plan. But she wasn't finished yet. Over the next few days my phone rang constantly. Unknown numbers. Missed calls. Voicemails filled with anger, tears, threats, and fake apologies. Sometimes it was my daughter. Sometimes it was the man. Sometimes it was someone else, trying to convince me to be reasonable. I didn't answer any of them. David did. "She's desperate," he told me during one of our calls. That's when people become dangerous. I believed him. One afternoon, as I was sitting in my flat with a blanket around my shoulders, I heard a knock at the door. Not a polite one. A hard, impatient pounding that made the frame rattle. I didn't move. The knocking grew louder. "Mom, open up!" My daughter's voice shouted through the door. I stayed still. After a moment, I heard a key sliding into the lock. The spare key. My heart began to race, but I forced myself to stay calm. I had expected this. David and I had already planned for it. The door opened. She stepped inside, her face flushed, her eyes wild. "You can't do this to me," she said. "You don't understand what you've done." I looked up at her slowly. "I understand exactly what I've done." She laughed, a sharp, broken sound. "You think that lawyer is going to save you? I had everything set up." "Everything?" "Yes," I said. "You did. And you ruined it yourself." She moved closer, lowering her voice. "If you just sign one more thing, we can fix this. I can make it all go away." I shook my head. "No." Her eyes darkened. "Then you're going to regret it." At that moment, the door behind her opened again. 2 uniformed police officers stepped inside. My daughter froze. "Ma'am," one of them said calmly, "we need to speak with you." David had called them. As they began to ask her questions, her confident mask finally fell apart. She stammered. She cried. She tried to blame me. But the evidence was too much. The bank records. The recordings. The forged forms. The attempt to enter my home without permission. When they led her away, she turned back to me. "I'm your daughter," she whispered. "You can't do this." I met her gaze. "You stopped being my daughter the night you left me to freeze." The door closed behind them. The silence that followed was deep, almost unreal. I sat there for a long time after they left, staring at the door, feeling something inside me finally begin to loosen. The fear. The tension. The constant sense of being hunted. It was over. Or so I thought. That night David called me. "There's something you need to know," he said. "What is it?" I asked. "The man who helped your daughter, he's trying to move money out of the country. He's running." I closed my eyes. "So it's not finished," I murmured. "No," David said. "But it will be." And I knew, as I stared out at the snow-covered streets of London, that the final chapter of this nightmare was about to be written. The night after my daughter was taken away by the police, I didn't sleep at all. Not because I was afraid anymore, but because the house was too quiet. For the first time in months, no one was calling me. No one was texting me. No one was watching my bank account or planning my future behind my back. The silence felt strange, like stepping into a room after a storm has passed, and realizing everything is still standing. I sat by the window of my flat, wrapped in Arthur's old blanket, watching snow fall onto the streetlights. Each snowflake looked fragile, but together they covered everything. I realized that was how I had survived too, not by being strong all at once but by enduring moment by moment. The next morning, David came to see me in person. "Your daughter has been formally charged with financial abuse and attempted fraud," he told me. "The man who helped her was arrested at the airport last night trying to leave the country." I closed my eyes. "They were really going to run?" I whispered. "Yes," he said. They had already moved a large amount of money into offshore accounts. But we traced it. For the first time since this nightmare began, I felt something that almost resembled peace. David placed a stack of papers on my table. "These are the final documents to secure your trust," he said. "Your home, your savings, everything. No one can touch it without your direct approval." I signed my name slowly, deliberately. Each stroke of the pen felt like reclaiming a piece of myself. Later that afternoon, I was taken back to my house, the one my daughter had already started planning to sell. The heating was on now. The rooms were warm. The smell of lemon cleaner lingered in the air, as if someone had tried to erase the past. But memories don't vanish that easily. I walked through each room, touching the furniture, the door frames, the places Arthur and I had laughed and argued and lived. This was still my home. It always had been. That evening, a call came from the police station. My daughter wanted to speak to me. I hesitated, then agreed. Her voice was small on the other end of the line. "Mom, I never meant for it to go this far." I closed my eyes. "You left me outside in the cold," I said quietly. "At -4 degrees. You knew I could have died." She started crying. I was scared. I thought if I didn't do it, he would take everything. "So you decided to take it from me instead," I replied. There was no answer. When the call ended, I knew something deep and painful. This wasn't just betrayal. It was the end of a relationship that would never be the same again. The weeks that followed were slow, but healing always is. My daughter's case moved through the courts. The man who had helped her was charged as well. Every piece of evidence David and I had gathered was used. Bank statements, audio recordings, witness testimony. The truth was finally visible to everyone. But the hardest part wasn't watching them face justice. It was learning to live with what my daughter had become. One afternoon, I visited Arthur's grave. I stood there with fresh flowers in my hands, the cold winter sun resting on my face. "You were right," I whispered. "About everything." He had always told me that love doesn't mean surrender. Even family can betray you if greed takes hold. When I returned home, I sat down and rewrote my will. Not out of anger. Out of clarity. I left some things for my daughter, photographs, memories, letters from her childhood, but not my home. Not my money. Not my future. Those belonged to me. As winter faded and spring approached, I felt stronger. Safer. Whole. Sometimes I still thought about that night on the steps, the cold biting into my skin, the door closing behind me. But now I understand something important. That night didn't break me. It revealed me. I was not weak. I was not confused. I was not finished. And in the end, the woman who was left to freeze was the only one who survived.